Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly wrap. Today, the 12th of December, 2025, and I'm joined on the screen by Mirko Kagura and Anthony Flapper. Gentlemen, how are we both?
Very well, Luke. Sun shining. Beautiful day outside. Happy to be alive.
Good boy, mate. Nice to have you on board too. And what about you, Black Cat? How are you?
Black Cat's pretty happy because the market's up over 1% today. I just had a quick look. So I quickly updated my numbers. So it's a nice day when I see green on my screen. You know, I pay attention to this stuff.
I figured you'd be excited. I saw you walking around the office looking like a Cheshire cat, a bit excited out there, mate. So I did notice that, mate. So look, since you started talking about markets, how about we just jump in straight into the numbers and all that kind of stuff? How's the week been?
It was actually a slow start to the week on market wise, both in Australia and in the US. Markets are waiting some data points and decision making and whatnot. What we did see in Australia is the RBA met for the last time of the year, and if people were hoping for that the old Christmas gift by way of rate cut, certainly not the case. Rates have remained on hold in Australia at 3.6. The RBA, just reading between the lines and having a look at their statement and the press conferences and whatnot, they're still pretty cautious. And remember, CPI did tick up the other day, so we sort of at a position where they don't want to sort of overheat things. And remember, we've still got a property market that seems to be bubbling along, and prices have actually gone in the other direction on that front. So I think the RBA is keeping its powder dry, which is interesting because in the US, on the other hand, they've actually cut rates in the same week. So it's almost like we're going in separate directions because there has been talk about will we see a rate increase in Australia next year? So I think that next year will be an interesting one, and having a look at what happens in the US in particular versus what's happening in Australia. Dollar's been a beneficiary of that, so all of a sudden the Australian dollars are perked up. I see a 66 in there at the moment versus the US, so that's been positive for the Aussie dollar. And we also had, speaking of other data points and whatnot, we had the unemployment rate sort of remaining relatively steady at 4.3% in Australia. But an interesting figure was the underemployment rate had actually surged from 5.7 to 6.2. What is the underemployment rate, you may ask? It's actually so these are people that are actually employed and are willing to and want more hours as part of their employment. So I do get a sense that there is a bit of that going on, that people are sort of looking for side hustles and additional hours on weekends and whatnot, because the cost of living is certainly there, and it's certainly not going south anytime soon. It seems to be going north every time you look at your household costs.
Absolutely, but I couldn't agree with you more on the household cost bit. They are, just paying insurance bills and going through that whole process. It is a little bit eye-watering at this moment in time, and just when everything adds up, it's a pretty big bill. But just thinking about the US Federal Reserve, because they did cut rates this week, and obviously the markets have seen the positive in that side. Do you think it was a reflection of where the economy is at, or do you think it's finally the pressure of Donald Trump virtually demanding that interest rates be cut, regardless of the economic landscape? Do you think the pressure is finally told on Jerome Powell?
Yeah, I think if you ask the Federal Reserve Committee, where that came from, they would say it's all data driven and the like. But I think there's certainly some truth to the enormous amount of pressure that's been put on that committee about cutting rates and trying to stimulate the US economy. So I think there's a bit of both there, and I think that what we're seeing is perhaps a bit of lack of independence, if you like, between the Federal Reserve and the actual US government itself, which is not the way it should work. But as we know, the rule book has been thrown out the window over the last few years, and we write new rule books as we go along. So, and I think next year will be more of the same. And it's one of the things that we've been talking about, the ability of the Federal Reserve to react and cut rates and all that. They've still got a fair bit up their sleeve because their rates were started at a higher point than now. So I think that if things get a little bit wobbly, a little bit shaky, that'll be the go-to trigger. But you can only go to that sort of particular ammunition so many times. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Anthony, a question for you, mate. You've been involved in markets for a long time. Obviously, you've sat on the wealth side, you've sat on the accounting side, so you've got this dual approach to the world that you see. When you look at the markets, are you surprised by the level of resilience in markets? Like if you think about the landscape's been quite complicated. A lot of things, a lot of moving parts out there. Yet the market just seems to taking it all in its stride and just keeps on progressing. Are you surprised?
Yes and no, Luke. I think one of the key factors that has been spoken about many a time, but the volume of SGC that gets paid to employees across this country, the money has to go somewhere. And when you're a fund manager mandated to invest, it has to go into the market. And now it might not be based on fundamentals of underlying companies, but they effectively can't be sitting in cash if they're a growth investor to a degree. So am I surprised that it's been as resilient as it has? Yes, but there is people need to generate return, and hence they will look to growth assets being the share market, whether it be here or the US, as opposed to cash and TDs. So I think that's a key factor that I continue to look at in terms of the volume of what's being pumped into the market. So and I think we definitely see a lot of people that tend to be or seeking advice or are more sophisticated, looking at alternatives, because the market is. I've had a couple of calls this week from clients concerned regarding, is it overheated and is there going to be a massive correction in the new year? So there's definitely concern, but it just tends to keep going in the right direction.
Yeah, it does. And I think the other thing there too, and I think a point that you raised, which is really valid, is that we're starting to see with interest rates starting to fall as well. So on your term deposits, whereas previously we were getting closer to fives, all of a sudden now we're nudging it at the low fours. And for cash at core, we're in the high threes. So that gap in terms of the return you're getting on a risk-free rate of return versus what the actual cost of living is, because the actual cost of living, we might say that inflation's running at somewhere between 2 and 3%, but the reality is, I think based on our costs, we're seeing everything's up in the order of 7, 8s, and 9s. So in order to make up for that gap, obviously cash and fixed interest is not going to deliver that outcome for you. So it's definitely an interesting one. And I think I like you have been caught by or surprised by the resilience of the market. But I do think your point around SG, the consistency of monies going into the system, the consistency of money is being deployed, I think is real. What I do think is really important, however, and this is where our clients are well looked after, is really confirming what that mandate is in your own head, and being very clear about your mandate. Because when you're clear about your mandate, then you deploy monies in the right possible manner, as opposed to just being a victim of circumstance, which is the point. So, but look, interesting to have your thoughts on that one. There was an interesting article in today's Financial Review that I just wanted to raise out there, and it talks about the generation gap. And the view is, and we're talking about, these are the CEOs of Wesfarmers, the CEOs of QBE, the CEOs of AMP and all that kind of stuff coming together and having a chinwag about the generations and where Australia is at this moment in time. And one of the things that they were very clear on was they are of the view that unless something is done, society really runs the risk of pulling itself apart because of the way the generations are positioned. And some of the things being touted at this moment in time are, there's this massive focus around property taxes and massive focus around improving building efficiencies and the way we go and build, and having house prices match what people can actually physically afford. So just in those 3 points alone, there's a massive focus on the housing side. There's also a discussion about saying that we need to expand to the regions. So we've got to, rather than everything being concentrated in the cities, we need to expand to the regions from that point of view. There's the other issue around the addressing of tax inequality. Get the retirement settings right, because there's that unfairness, or the generations do believe that there's that unfairness. And there's also this notion of lifting skills. So these are all wonderful examples of what the generation gap is and how we could improve it. Anthony, just getting back to you again, I guess, from that point of view, and addressing the tax inequalities and thinking about the retirement settings, what are some of the things that come to mind straight away in those two areas that you kind of think, well, they're probably something on the government's agenda if we want to, or if we were serious about addressing the generation gap?
Well, if you're looking at from a tax perspective, Luke, the superannuation has been discussed at length in regards to reducing the concession. So effectively at present, you've got up to $2 million mum and dad can get into their self-managed super fund, start drawing an income stream from that tax-free. Yeah.
And that's each.
That's each. Yeah.
So that's $4 million.
Yeah. So in regards to, there's definitely scope, and it's been touted by governments trying to get into power and those in power in regards to whether they change that and whether there's a tax on earnings inside the super fund over a certain level. So that's one area. The other area, I think, is I just lost my train of thought in terms of it's gone.
That's right. That's right. What about capital gains, Anth? Do you think?
Sorry, that's what I was talking about. Capital gains. So we've had this debate in regards to, and that's really around the tax inequality. So effectively, you've got people selling property and incurring capital gains or achieving capital gains and effectively paying tax on those. Where you've got your principal residence, the wealthy tend to upgrade all the time and effectively make significant profits from their main residence, whether that's an area that they may target above a certain level. But also capital gains inside super funds on certain assets is another target area. So capital gains, and the other thing is the concession. The 50% discount that's currently in play has been there for a long time. I think it was 2000 and early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
When indexation was previously in play before that. Indexation was effectively still existed for a little bit, but effectively the discounts taken in place. You think about if you reduce that discount from 50% for your general investor from 50 to 25, what would that mean in terms of cash flow going into the government coffers? It would be enormous. It would be a huge number. So I think there's definitely across the superannuation spectrum, we've had it very good for a long time, and it's great for us, great for our business, and great for our clients. But I'm not sure how long that's going to go on. And the capital gains is definitely an area that you think would get targeted at some point.
You know, and look, it's hard to, and then you might even throw in an inheritance tax into the mix and a couple of others, and all of a sudden you start to see the swab of that. Okay, if we think about the housing side, and this is something, I guess, from that point of view, which has been a battle for everyone, they're now talking about moving away from things like stamp duty, having an annual land tax applied to your principal residence. They're talking about removing the permits and all the kind of stuff that happened, and being able to introduce, I think in Sydney now, you can actually introduce your backyard and now have a granny flat in your backyard without a permit and all that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden start to generate an income stream from that point of view. And then they're also talking about having house prices that match what people can physically afford. So at this moment in time, the median house price, we're talking circa $900,000+, where probably from an affordability point of view, that number needs to be closer to 600,000, maybe 500,000. What are some of the things that go through your mind when you see things like that? Are they plausible strategies? Will they help the generation gap thing, or is this just hot air in your world?
Well, it's only hot air if we don't do anything about it, and I don't think that we've done enough to sort of evolve around the property and the arguments that we were hearing in the 80s and 90s when the property market actually struggled, and prices went south back then. We've been talking about the same stuff forever. We still think that we need to have I don't know, 1 or 2 extra bedrooms in our homes, that we need to have, big parcels of land and all that. Nothing has evolved on that front. We haven't made, apartment living attractive enough. We've created, ghost towns in some instances where it's just, you can see the place has got no life, no vibrance. And this is all, sort of development type issues and poor planning. We've got a scenario where it simply just costs too much to build. Like the mathematics today is the dirt plus the cost of building is more expensive than it is to buy a place that's there. So something's broken in that front, and that's a common thing. So you look at, the numbers simply don't add up. And, a lot of that's got to do with the inherent, issues that we've got, from the planning phase all the way through to the cost of construction, the cost of labour, and the like. So I think we need to have a big revisit on that front. And, a lot of this is driven by people that are, certainly unsatisfied with the fact that, they may be paying rents, and they're, perhaps, ex-uni students that, or a current uni students, accumulating help debt or HEX debt, as it used to be called. So people are starting to lose hope of the opportunity to sort of enter that market as well. And that was always known as the Great Australian Dream. I don't know that it is anymore. So I think we need to have a look at that whole, the whole policy, the whole incentives that we put in place, because what I've seen in the last 20 years is every time that we create something which apparently is supposed to be a solution for, say, first home buyers as an example, or downsizers, it actually works in the complete opposite direction. It actually makes affordability even worse, makes the notion of owning a home unattainable.
Yeah, okay. And look, thank you, gentlemen. I guess following on from and listening to what both of you have said, for me, it feels clear that the generation gap is real. And I think it's something that, as to whether or not we're going to pull each other apart, as society will pull each other apart, that seems to be a bit melodramatic, but it does feel real. And particularly, as a dad with some young kids at home, and you're looking at them coming into the world, you're kind of going, how do they have the same opportunities that we had? Because there does feel like, if you were born in the right time, you had the benefit of this tide rising. And can this tide continue to rise at the same rapid rate that it's risen over the last 20 odd years? Will that occur in the next 20 years is the question, I guess. For the two of you, do you think the generation gap is something which is real and something that needs to be addressed? Or do you think this is just another thought bubble where we're just having a chat?
I thought the generation gap was me getting too old. I thought the generation gap was. Look, I think it's a healthy discussion to have, but it has to have all generations actually actively involved and having a voice. And I don't care whether you're a secondary school student that doesn't vote. Let's get these kids involved, because they're the future of the country, right? They're the ones that are going to continue to build on this country. So let's get the input from the people that have built it. Let's get it from the people that are going to build it, and let's give respect to those people that play a massive role in the development of our communities. And our leaders, our teachers, our nurses, our police officers. I feel like we need to address all these issues.
Yeah. What about yourself, Anthony? What's your view?
I think Mick's right. I think there's a lot of expertise in this space, and I'm sure that Australia's not on their own in terms of facing this. So I think we probably need to be looking to other countries that have had similar issues or dealing with similar issues. There's a lot of smart people around that can assist in this regard, and getting to the coalface of the problems, and listening, and then trying to do something about it to build a plan. Because I think, and a lot of it does stem from that building and the cost to live, and you're seeing that every day. We're having discussions about it every day with clients. It's got to be addressed, because you're right. Our kids coming through, you're probably going to be living in tents in the outback.
Yeah, and I think there's probably two parts to this. I think the country's been guilty of having its head in the sand for a very long time. So this problem wasn't something that was unique. It didn't creep up on us. We knew it was coming, We just chose not to do anything about it. And at the same time, it's probably coincided at the same time where it feels like the rich or the wealthier have got wealthier from that point of view. And that's been okay. But what that's meant is it's pushed other people out of that space. And it's probably dropped them on the other side. So if you think about middle class and you think about where society works when it works really well, is that it has quite a healthy middle class in terms of its size and its scope and its spread. That at the moment feels like it's becoming compressed. And usually when there's a compression, you have people jumping out on the good side and people jumping out on the bad side. On this particular occasion, it feels like they're more going out on the bad side. So that's where the inequality sits. So look, I think the fact that corporate Australia is having these discussions, I think, is wonderful. I think the fact that the leaders of the country as well are putting forward suggestions, I think, is also fantastic. As to whether or not we're going to have a government which is brave enough, because ultimately electoral terms are 4 years, yeah? So a lot of the things that they propose, a lot of the things they suggest are going to take 10, 15, 20 years to fix. Do they have the appetite to do that over that 4-year period is going to be an interesting one. Now, gentlemen, it's the 12th of December, so we're 13 months into Donald Trump. And I thought it'd be a little bit of fun if I could lean on you and mindful of the fact that if you say anything stupid, you will not be allowed into the US. So you want to be very careful now, because that's where we've gone to in the world, because we're all for free speech as long as we're not critical. So that's really important to remember that. But if I could ask you a question, what I want you to think about is I want you to think of one good thing the Trump administration has done in the last 12 months and one thing where you think, maybe you got that a little bit wrong, without being overly critical, clearly, from that point of view, and just your general vibe of what you think the last 12 months has been. Mick, I might go to you first, and then Anthony, I'll lead to you then next.
Okay, I'm trying to think of something good. I'm trying to be polite. I know that my social media is going to get scrutinised over the last 5 years, and I know that I'm probably going to Guantanamo Bay if I turn up in LA. But anyway, the good thing, perhaps that we're 13 months into a 48-month sentence. That's a good thing. We're not into month one, so I don't know. That's a good thing. And the bad thing is that I would say the level of self-promotion and disregard for anything that even looks like a semblance of the rules and doing the right thing and being a decent person is non-existent.
All right. So from a general vibe point of view, are you going?
I wish I took up that offer of taking that 4-year cruise that was on the market.
Fair. And what about you, Anthony? What's your view of the world?
I know he's there's a debate, isn't it? He's been fantastic. Like, to be honest, he's stopped wars. He's should have got the Peace Prize. This week he's been given by FIFA a Peace Award. Never been given before. Maybe the US is looking for the World Cup. I'm not sure.
Well, they got it next year. They have, actually. So.
Well, he's got to be the ambassador. He's probably have the opening kickoff. Yeah, it's all been positive, hasn't it?
Tongue in cheek, you say.
I don't like Guantanamo Bay, and my social media doesn't need to be checked.
You've clearly got flights booked. I'm telling he's going on holidays. Luke, he hasn't told us yet.
Yeah, no. Well, look, I think if I was to reflect on the 13 months, I think the most pleasing thing is that he's still alive. Because I think he's upset that many people, and I'm amazed that he's still actually breathing and someone hasn't done anything stupid. So that's kudos. I think from a negative point of view, I'm very much in Mirko's camp on that one. I think what we've done to democracy and what we're doing to ethics and what we're doing to the standards that you walk past and the standards you accept I think we've fundamentally changed the axis of how this world operates, and I don't think it's good. And when your government and your leaders are behaving that way, then that gives an excuse for corporates to behave that way. That gives an excuse for administrations and government departments to behave that way. And when people start to behave that way, that makes people angry, and that makes people disillusioned with the whole process. And that's not a good thing. And I think, the world fundamentally works better when we look after each other. And I don't think, one thing I'm pretty clear about, the last 12, 13 months has been about a particular outcome, namely his and his family's and those within the inner circle. And they've done fundamentally really well. And, like even listening to him in Pennsylvania the other night when he was giving his speech around, affordability and all that kind of stuff, which he said is a hoax. He said it's invented and so on. The reality is people are actually hurting, and his own base is hurting really hard as a result. And he's actually ignoring all that. So it just baffles me in the way he's gone about treating other countries. In saying that, it's probably been the most entertaining 13 months we've had for a long time from a political setting, because you just kind of sit back and think, I just never foresaw a world that would behave in such a manner. I think what's been pleasing in reverse of that is the fact that governments around the world, outside of the minnows, the minnows, effectively, they haven't behaved that way. So Europe has remained relatively staunch. Australia has behaved properly. I think Japan has behaved properly. I think Canada has behaved properly. So I think those countries are behaving, but I do think the world is going to be a very different place in 4 to 8 years as a result of this term of the Trump administration. Fair points, gentlemen?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not going. Yeah.
You're both weak.
Yeah.
All I'll say to that, Luke, is I think you're right. But, these weekly wraps are going to get a lot shorter when he's out of office.
Yeah, actually, you're probably right too. You're probably right.
Yeah,
A
lot of comedians out of content as well.
Look, one thing I will say, do yourself a favour. Not that I'm a fan of late night TV and so on, but America has got some really good late night TV. So someone like a Jon Stewart or a Jimmy Kimmel, if you're really wanting some entertainment, or a Steve Colbert and whatever, and forget about whether or not they're left or right leaning. They're just taking the piss. They're having a bit of fun, yeah? And the reality is there is that much content that these guys could be on TV, I reckon, for 12 hours a day and not get bored. So what this Trump administration is doing is quite entertaining. All right, gentlemen, it's 12:15 on a Friday. We're now heading into lunch. We've got the weekend coming up. I believe the weather is actually going to be semi-reasonable this weekend, finally. We're a week out to Christmas. I'm imagining the two of you are going Christmas shopping to buy your better halves the gifts and do all those sorts of things. So what have we got planned? Exciting times?
Can you pick up a gift for me when you're out there, Luke?
Yeah, sure. I will do that for you, mate.
Make it 2.
It's good to see the two of you are very romantic, which I'm really pleased about. Well done, boys.
Hey, before we jump ship, did you guys catch the person of the year, the Time Award that came out by any chance?
From what I understand, Mick, I believe it might have been the Tech Bros, and it wasn't just one person. There was a multiple number, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. And let me see if I can find the picture. Here we go. Person of the year by Time. I'll use my little cursor here so I get the people right. So that's the Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, the AMD CEO Lisa Su, Elon Musk needs no introduction, the NVIDIA boss Jensen Huang, next to him Sam Altman from OpenAI. Who we got here? We got the CEO of Google DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodi, and AI pioneer Fei Li, who launched her own World Lab startup. So these are the people that are the architects of AI, and they've been listed as the award winners and taking us into the future. But I was thinking about the award and that, and there's been some controversial people that have been given this award, namely guys like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Ayatollah Khomeini. There's been some interesting awards given that. Vladimir Putin's been on it. Donald Trump, speaking of the great man, has been on it. But I think that there was a couple of people missed, gentlemen, and I took the privilege just to make sure that no one was left out, and that the three great men on the screen here managed to get in there as well. And I thought that would be an apt way to sort of finish off the week. And you know what? While people are giving out awards to themselves, I figured why not? We'll share one with each other and with our listeners.
That is such a sad picture. That is. Look, it is an indictment on the world when you kind of sit back and think that the guys who are probably causing the most damage globally have been recognised as being the people of the year. For all the stuff that they're doing. Interestingly enough, this is also in the same week that these people who are the architects of AI and technology and all the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes, interestingly this week that we in Australia have actually banned social media for 16-year-olds and under, and the chaos that is going to cause leading into Christmas. So to all our parents out there with young kids, be patient, be kind, breathe deeply.
Because they're special. Rattling off those names, those historical names, where you sort of scratch your head and go, "I can't believe that individual was named, Person of the Year, etc." I wonder if in 20 years' time we'll be sitting there going, "Can you believe that we actually gave this award to this concept known as AI?" Given what has transpired after that, I look forward to sitting there in the armchair, having my cup of tea, because that's all I drink in those days, and seeing how that decision panned out.
Mecca, I think that is a cracking suggestion, and I think in 20 years, 30 years' time, we'll be reading books on COVID and in particular what Melbourne went through and why it went through it and the stupidity behind that whole structure. And I also think we'll be looking at this time of the Trump era going, really? Did that really occur? And some of the stuff that has happened, the way it's being governed, and the sycophants and the amount of, well, for the want of a better phrase, the ass kissing is beyond comprehension. I've never seen anything like it. And we're talking about adults here. We're not talking about kids. We're talking about adults. It's a fascinating time to be alive, gentlemen. Fascinating time. All right. Well, look, without further ado, given that you two are being romantic and you need to go buy your Christmas presents, I'm going to bid you both well. So have a wonderful weekend. To our wonderful staff here, as always, thank you for all the work that you do. You're absolutely awesome. And to our wonderful, wonderful clients, we've got what have we got? We've got 12 more days, 13 more days till Christmas. Please be safe out on the roads. It is getting a little bit crazy out there. I've been watching some drivers do some crazy things, just trying to get somewhere in front for 10 meters or whatever from that point of view. So hold back a little bit. Do not drink and drive at this moment as well. So be very careful with that. Enjoy yourselves this weekend, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
See you guys.